Good morning, friends. Welcome to our Godly Play classroom. Let's look over at our church calendar. We are on the last Sunday of the Easter season. We have had 6 weeks to celebrate the mystery of Easter. And we know that there was one person who is the mystery of Easter. When he was here on earth, people listened to him and followed him, but they weren't always sure who exactly he was. And so one day when they asked him, "Hey, who are you?" Jesus said, "I am the light." And we have that light with us now as we get ready for our story. So I invite you to join me in getting ready. Getting ready can look different for everyone. You might want to find a comfortable place. Get snuggled up with a favorite blanket or stuffed animal, or maybe get together with your family. And we'll just take one deep breath to help us get ready. Are you ready for our story? Our story today comes from the book of Acts in the Bible. So if we look at the New Testament, we have 4 books of the Bible that tell us the stories of Jesus. And then the book of Acts tells us what happened after Jesus went up to heaven. What happened to his friends, his followers and disciples, and how they began the church. Now, one of Jesus's best friends was a man named Peter. And Peter had been with Jesus the whole time. And Peter shared everything with all the other followers of Jesus. And the followers of Jesus, like Jesus, were Jews. And they shared everything they had. And they reminded each other of the stories that Jesus told. But they thought that other people were not welcome in their group. That the only people who could truly follow the way of Jesus were Jews. And anyone else outside of that group, anyone else who was different, couldn't join in. Now, some of the people who were not welcome in were Romans. The disciples thought that they could not be part of the family of God as followers of Jesus because the Romans were too different and they didn't belong. Now, there was a Roman during this time. His name was Cornelius, and he was an officer of the Roman army. That meant that he had a lot of power. But the Roman army were enemies of the Jewish people in Jerusalem. Now, Cornelius worshiped God. He gave his money to people who did not have enough, and he prayed. One afternoon, Cornelius had a dream. And in that dream, he saw an angel, and the angel said his name, Cornelius. And Cornelius was afraid. I imagine if you hear an angel say your name, you probably are a little afraid. Cornelius asked, "What do you want?" And the angel said, "God has heard your prayers. God that has seen your kindness. God remembers you. And there's a person I want you to meet. You need to send some men to go and get a man named Peter." At that time, Peter was staying in a house not too far away. And meanwhile, Peter went up to the roof of the house where he was staying to talk to God. And Peter fell asleep. I don't know about you, but sometimes I take a nap while I'm praying to God, especially if it's late at night or early in the morning. Peter had a dream. And in that dream, a voice said, "Hey, Peter, you can eat whatever you want." That sounds pretty good to me. But at that time, the Jewish people had very strict rules about what they were allowed to eat. For example, they were not allowed to eat lobster. And so Peter said, "No, Lord, I have never eaten food that I'm not allowed to have. I've never eaten food that is considered unholy or unclean." But the voice in his dream said, Peter, you can eat anything you want. And the voice said this 3 times. Just then, the 2 men that Cornelius had sent came to the door of Peter. And so Peter went down and met the men. And Peter was still thinking about this dream. And so he heard the Spirit of God say to him, look, these men are looking for you, and I want you to go with them. Don't ask any questions. I've sent them. And so Peter said, okay, I'll go with you. And he went with the men, and they took him to Cornelius. Now Cornelius had called everyone he knew, his friends and his relatives, to meet Peter. And Peter looked around and saw all the people who were different from him. All of these Romans that were supposed to be his enemy. They were different from his family and friends. They had a different culture. They spoke a different language. But Peter kept thinking about this dream. Was the message of God's love for them too? And so Peter was he felt in his heart that he knew what he had to say. Peter said, you understand that it is against my rules to be friends with or even visit anyone who is not like me. But God has shown me I cannot call any person unholy or unclean. Peter told them all about Jesus and the good news. Peter told them that the love of God is for everyone and that we are all welcome in the kingdom of God. I wonder how we feel about people who are different from us. I wonder who we need to welcome into our group. I wonder how we can show more people the love of God. Now it's time for us to change the light. We know that the light of Christ, even though it's represented just here in our Godly Play classroom, when I change it, that light doesn't go away. It's not gone. We each carry the light of Christ with us in our hearts, and we get to share that light wherever we go.